Hello everyone, this is Dr. Carolyn Maria, working as an assistant professor in Loyola College of Education, Chennai. The title of the course is Educational Psychology. In this video lecture, we are going to focus on Unit 1, Educational Psychology, Human Growth and Development. We'll be focusing on the meaning, definition and branches of psychology, meaning, scope and significance of educational psychology. Let's first focus on what is psychology. The etymological meaning of the word psychology came from two Greek origin, psyche, logos. Psyche means soul, logos means study of. So, psychology is termed as study of soul. The credit of coining the word psychology goes to a person called Rudolf Gockel because he wrote a book in 1590 and the title of the book is Psychologia. From this only we have come across with the word psychology, and it is more than 2000 years old branch of science. Let's focus on the historical development of psychology. Psychology was considered to be the study of soul, but people were not aware of what is soul, as well as Plato and Aristotle also failed to answer what is soul, its nature. Then psychology was considered to be the study of mind. Philosophers in the middle period, they were considering psychology as the study of mind and its process. But they had a confusion whether mind is a part of human anatomy or mind is just a function. And people were not able to accept that psychology was the study of mind. Then psychology was considered to be the study of consciousness from the Descartes period. Edward Brantford Titchener, he defined psychology as the study of consciousness and felt it could be studied introspectively. In 19th century, William James and Wilhelm Wundt and others considered psychology as the study of consciousness, which means wakefulness or awareness. But modern psychologists did not accept psychology as the science of consciousness because it ignored unconscious as well as subconscious state of mind. What is happening at present right now is conscious. What happened recently is in our subconscious mind. What happened earlier is there in our unconscious mind. Then psychology became the study of human behavior. Behavior is the resultant of the manifestation of conscious as well as unconscious urges of mankind. So, behavior includes cognitive, which is related to our thinking and reasoning and memory, then affective, all our emotions, and psychomotor domains, that is, all the activities. So, behavior do not only confine to the manners but covers the every activity of a man from birth to death. How we portray ourselves before everyone is what called as our behavior. A famous psychologist, Robert S. Woodworth, he said that first, psychology lost its soul in the hands of Kant, then its mind in the hands of Watson, then it lost its consciousness in the hands of Freud, then still it remains as the behavior of a sort. You know who is this man? He is the father of experimental psychology. He is called as Wilhelm Wundt because he was the one who has established the first psychology laboratory in a place called Germany in Leipzig. And the very first book of psychology called Principles of Physiological Psychology was also written by Wilhelm Wundt. Let's now focus on the definitions of psychology. Psychology is the study of human behavior, its cause and conditions given by William McDonnell. Psychology is the study of human behavior and human relationship given by L.D. Crow and Alice Crow. Pillsbury said that psychology may be most satisfactorily defined as the science of human behavior. Let me give you some memory tips to remember this. So, you know, McDonald, all this burger and all you'll have. So there you have, you had your food and it has its own causes and conditions. You remember like that. And whenever a crow crows in front of our house, we just say that some relations are going to come. So you can relate to that. and Pillsbury Chucky Fresh Atta you can remember, and it is a very satisfactory atta for you. You can remember like that. Now focus on the scope of psychology. So what is psychology? Where it ends? Psychology helps every individual to become aware of the behavior of a person and what a person does in why he does so in that particular situation. Whether psychology is called to be a science or not, psychology is called to be a science because it deals with a lot of facts, theories, principles, cause and effect relationship, and that's why psychology could be called as the behavioral science. And of course, it is dynamic also. It keeps changing because human behavior keeps changing. In a day of 24 hours, we are not in the same behavior from morning till we go to bed. We keep coming up with a lot of mood swing. So psychology could be considered as a sort of behavioral science which is dynamic and unpredictable. So it is concluded as psychology is the positive science. There are different methods of psychology. We all know that psychology is the study of human behavior. In order to study the human behavior, people have gone for so many methods called introspection or subjective method, observation or extrospection, experimental method, survey method, interview method, cumulative record method, anecdotal record, clinical method, comparative method, test method, questionnaire method, etc. So many methods are there. Among the various methods, let's focus on few methods. The very oldest method is called as introspection method or subjective method. The mere word introspection came from a Latin origin, intro, which means within, and sphere, which means look. So, introspection means to look within, which is even otherwise called as our inner perception, self realization, self observation, and self examination. R.S. Woodworth calls introspection as self observation. And J.R. Angle, he says that introspection is looking inward. There are various merits and demerits are there. In a situation, if a person behaves in a way, if you are asking the person to write a report about why he behaved such a way in such a situation, he would focus on his own positive elements only. So that is actually a demerit. It is very subjective, and it reduces the reliability also trustworthiness because he focuses mainly on his positive aspect and he hides all his negative aspect. And for animals and children we are not able to use this method, but this method is even having a lot of merits also. It is not going to cost any money, it is very cost effective and it is user friendly, and of course it enhances the self awareness of every person whoever is undergoing this particular method. The second method is called as observation, which came from a Latin origin observare, which means to keep open. There are four types of observation, that is direct, indirect. The indirect observation method, the observer as well as even the observant, they know for sure that what they are being observed. But indirect method, here the observer is substituting another person to uh, have an observation and give a report. Then the next method is called as natural method. Here the observant is unaware of the natural method, that is observation, but artificial observant is aware of. So in this observation, two people are mainly involved. One person is the observer, another person is observant. Observer is the one who observes another person and writes a report about the person and gives to the authority. There is another method called scheduled and unscheduled. In schedule, the observation is pre-planned. For an example, schools and colleges and all, you come across with CEO, DO inspection. All these are scheduled observation. Unscheduled, spontaneously, on the spot, some higher authority may just peep into the classroom and they just see and observe the students. And next method is participatory and non-participatory. In this participatory method, both the observer as well as even the observant are very active. But in non-participatory, the observant will not be much active, but rather they would be passive. Once again, this method is also having some merits and demerits. Of course, this is also a cost effective and user friendly, and it enhances awareness about the person. It also has the demerit because if the observant is not having any sort of soft corner for the one whom he is observing, he or she may write a negative report about the person. So it is subjective, difficult to record the data, and of course it reduces the reliability, and lack of trained observers are there at present. Since introspection and observation had its own limitations, psychologists have gone for another method called experimental method. The mere word experimental came from a Latin origin which means experimentum, which is a trial or a test. It is a scientific and objective method because it was free from bias and prejudice of the experimenter. It was conducted very systematically and more exact method. It was considered to be a research method because it was having its own cause and effectiveness. For an example, if a teacher wanted to know the effectiveness of teaching, the teacher can go for a sort of assessment. So, the methodology what the teacher follows is the teaching method, which could be of using a blackboard or it could be technology enabled, ICT enabled teaching. And at the end of the class, if the teacher goes for an assessment, that is the achievement of the students. So the teacher would be able to understand the effectiveness of teaching. So this is called as an experimental method where the teaching methodologies are independent and the achievement of the student is dependent variable, because the independent variable, the teaching methodology could be manipulated, could be changed according to the needs of the students. Another method is called survey method, where the information can be collected from a large number of people within a short period of time. You could see so many people coming for asking so many questions when you are outside in a mall or in a public place with regard to your opinion about something or someone. It could be done in a written questionnaire format, or it could be door to door, or it could be even done through mail also. Interview is also considered to be a sort of survey method. Another method is called as case study method or case history method. Here, the teacher is expected to find out a student who is having a problem or a student who is struggling with something. So, collection of facts about the student should be done by the teacher. And here, the teacher, first of all, has to develop a sort of rapport with the students, because the student will not be able to reveal all the information to the teacher with regard to the family background, financial aspects, study habits, academic background, and information regarding the hobbies, habits, siblings, everything. So, the teacher, first of all, has to identify a student who is having a problem. Then the teacher has to collect all the information from the student for in order to understand the depth of the problem. And here this method is also having a sort of limitation, since if the teacher is not having any concern for the student, the teacher may give a negative report about the student. So it is subjective and it is not reliable, and it is of course time consuming because teacher has to develop a rapport towards the student. Then only the student can reveal all the information to the teacher. Next method is called as interview method. The mere word interview means conversation with a purpose. Here, two people are involved. One is the interviewer who asks the question, another person is the interviewee who answers the questions. It is a face to face relationship, but the interview happens with the specific purpose. It is also having so many limitations because it has to be conducted in an artificial situation, and there are a lot of opportunities for the interviewer to be biased, because if you see in the movie Kavan or Mudalban, the interviewer asks all this embarrassing questions to the interviewee. So it needs well trained competent interviewer in order to conduct this kind of interview. It is of course costly with regard to time, money, as well as even the labor. There are various branches of psychology. We can divide the entire branches of psychology into two broad categories as pure psychology and applied psychology. Pure psychology deals with the theoretical frameworks and all the principles in psychology. Applied psychology also deals with the theoretical principles, but here the practical knowledge is also emphasized. So in applied psychology, we come across with the branch called as educational psychology. We know for sure that psychology is the study of human behavior. Educational psychology is the study of the behavior of a learner in an educational environment. It helps the teacher as well as even the student with regard to the process and product of education, because the mere process of education should be understood by the student, and it gives a lot of insight to the teacher in order to change or modify the behavior of the students, because the mere word learning means behavior modification. In order to go for an all round development in the student, every teacher has to undergo the course of educational psychology. It concerns with the human behavior in an educational environment and educational practices. It helps the teacher to improve the subject matter according to the growth and development pattern of the learner, and change the teaching methodology in relation to the differentially capable learners. And with regard to the intelligence and memory and creativity of the learner, the teacher has to change the teaching methodology as well as even the curriculum. It helps the educational practitioners in bringing out the effective, desirable change in the behavior of the students as well as in the teaching learning process. There are so many people who have given the definition of educational psychology. B.F. Skinner said educational psychology is a branch of psychology which deals with the teaching and learning. Charles E. Skinner said educational psychology covers the entire range of behavior and personality as related to education. E. A. Peel said that educational psychology is the science of education. L. D. Crow and Alice Crow said educational psychology describes and explains the learning experiences of an individual from birth through the old age. The nature of education psychology is it is the ultimate resultant combination of education and psychology. It is an applied science which applies the principles of general psychology in the field of education. Education psychology is both theoretical as well as practical. It first gives the behavior of the student as a finding, then applies a technique to modify and develop it. For an example, if you are a teacher, if your student is having a problem of attention seeking behavior, all the time disturbing the class, so the behavior of the student is first shown to you, then only you are going for finding out the reason for the student behavior, and you will try to help the student to overcome the behavior. Education psychology focuses mainly on the instructional design, that is, the teaching methodology. How far the teacher is able to change and modify by incorporating educational technology in order to make the class very easy and simple. And it helps the teacher to go for a very good curriculum development also. And it helps the teacher to organize the learning with regard to slow learners, average learners, high achievers, gifted children, etc. Education psychology helps the teacher or enables the teacher to find out the students who are in need of special kind of education. That is the ones, those who are having some learning disabilities, learning difficulties and all. And it helps the teacher to have very good classroom management skill. Let's focus on the scope of educational psychology. Scope means the limits of a particular subject in the field of its operation. That is, where it has to start and what it has to include and where it has to end. So both the side of one particular area is called as the scope. That is starting point as well as even the ending point. And it has some five scope with regard to education psychology. Learner could be an active learner or a passive learner. Learning process may be desirable or undesirable. Learning experience may be positive or negative. And learning environment could be a pleasant environment or an unpleasant environment. And teacher can be an effective teacher or ineffective teacher. The learning happens in a formal or informal way. Formal in a normal classroom setup, informal at home in society. All beings, both animal as well as even the human beings, also learn. And the learning process is concerned with the nature and principles of learning and method of learning, improvement of memory, development of concepts, methods, and effectiveness of learning. So, learning could be an active process, it could be stimulated or guided by both internal and external factors. Internal factors is your own internal motivation to get the first mark or to get achieve something. External factor is the ranking system or the certification, and it will help us to go for a very good desirable learning outcome. Learning experience may be both positive or effective or negative. Interactive effect of components associated with the learner teacher learning process and the learning environment. It could be both positive with regard to learning. So the positive learning experiences will help a student to strengthen the motivation. Negative learning experiences will weaken the motivation and it will increase the adjustment problems. The next, we'll go on with the factors which determine the learning experience. The general attitude of a teacher as well as the student will affect the learning experience of a student. And the quality of teaching aids, if you come up with a very good quality of teaching aid with everyday new activities, if you go with, the student's learning experience will be pleasurable. And the difficulty level of content, if the content is having a very highly difficult, the teacher has to start with from known to unknown, from simple to complex. And before teaching, the teacher is expected to check the readiness of the learner. If the student is not ready enough to learn, whatever input you give, it will not serve the purpose at all. And the physical teaching learning environment should be conducive in nature. And the teaching methodologies should be applicable to all the, it should address all the levels of learners with regard to slow learners, high achievers, even the gifted children, etc. And reinforcement technique, whenever the students are coming up with any answer, the teacher has to then and there motivate. And whenever the student come up with anything wrong, any negative answers or having any understanding problem, for that also the teacher has to reinforce and motivate the students to overcome all the struggles whatever they are meeting. And this will improve the learner's intelligence also. Learning environment is the physical space, the classroom setup where the student, teacher and the teacher will be having a proper contact with the students with in relation to the learning process. And it also depends upon the background of the teacher as well as background of the learner also, in the sense with regard to the culture from where the teacher hails from, with regard to the language and with regard to the customs, whatever the celebrations the teacher and the student goes across with, and with regard to the administration of the school environment or even the higher education environment. If the administration is very strict administration, the students may not be able to learn properly, because always in a very controlled environment, you should give them the freedom, but the freedom should demand the discipline from the students also. And with regard to infrastructure, highly crowded classroom will not encourage learning in the students. And same way, in-service training program also should be given to the teachers in order to teach the students very effectively. And always the teachers are expected to have a very good learner friendly curriculum. Curriculum should not be always boring and rigid curriculum, rather it should be flexible based upon the needs of the students. And with regard to the teacher and teaching, the teacher is involved in the task of illuminating the student's mind with a process called as teaching. So, teacher can apply her intelligence, accuracy in observation, and subject mastery by attacking the ignorance and the misunderstanding of the students. So, teacher has to help the students to overcome all the superstitious beliefs and misconceptions and all. So the effective teaching will help the student to become mastery over whatever subject matter they learn. So for which the teacher is expected to select and organize the material from easy to difficult. And this interest as well as the commitment of the teacher plays a major role with regard to effective teaching. The teachers are expected to be very professional with regard to their profession. What is the significance of educational psychology to the teachers? So, according to the child, the teacher is considered to be a representative of an adult world. According to the superior, teacher is considered to be the director of learning. According to the community sees the teacher as a symbol of cultural values and morality. Let's now focus on the significance of educational psychology. Educational psychology helps the teacher to know the learner. Let's now focus on the significance of educational psychology. Educational psychology helps the teacher to know the learner better, by which the teacher can motivate the students, and it creates a sort of self awareness for the teacher in order to arrange the teaching learning process so that the teacher can design the curriculum according to the needs of the students. Educational psychology helps the teacher to maintain the discipline because the teacher can really understand the behavior of the student, why a student behave in such a way in such a situation, by which the teacher can render the guidance to the students to solve all the classroom problems, and at last it helps the teacher to select and organize the content material to make the teaching learning process a very effective one. The key takeaways from this video lecture are: psychology started with the study of soul, then mind, then consciousness, then ended in the study of human behavior. Studying the behavior of the learner in an educational environment is called educational psychology. Educational psychology enables the teacher to bring out the desirable behavioral changes in the students. Just reflect on these following questions. As a teacher, how will you bring out the desirable behavioral changes in your students? What are your plans for making your teaching learning process very interesting for your students' sake? You can refer these kind of books for further information. Thank you for listening. Wish you all good luck.